Today, we are honored to have a newer member of our congregation since 2021, Mary Bruce, and her husband Steve is here today. And she is a member of the Union Book Club. She jumped right into that. And she's also been serving as a member of the membership team. And now we're going to have Mary share with us what she gives her heart to.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I had to have this assistive device, so please raise your hand if I get away from it and you have trouble hearing me. I'm Mary Bruce and my pronouns are she and her. I was born and raised in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. This town of 30,000 people had no less than 4 Catholic churches, each equipped with a parochial school. We also had a Catholic high school, and that meant that my sister and I had 12 years of education going on. While my first husband was not Catholic, we married in the University of Wisconsin Chapel in 1965, just 3 months before he was drafted into the Army. After his initial training, we were stationed in Germany for 2 years and then finished his service in Fort Hood, Texas. By early 1969, we had returned to civilian life in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. One Sunday morning, not long after we moved, I decided to go to church, and I left my 2-year-old son and my 1-month-old son with their dad. Off to church I went, and everything was going fine until the sermon. And the priest started telling us how awful we were, and how sinful we are, and how much we don't deserve the salvation that was delivered to us. Before he finished this diatribe, I said to self, "This is not helping me live my life." And I stood up and I walked out, and I never went back. Shortly thereafter, I informed my parents of this decision via letter. And I invited them to have a conversation if they had questions. They never pursued the topic, but they also did not show any disapproval. My guess was they didn't want to defend the church against any arguments I might have. They knew me. So that started a 53-year hiatus of unaffiliation with organized religion. During that period, I occasionally attended religious services, mostly weddings and funerals, or because there was some special musical offering, particularly if it was a grandchild performing. As my parents aged, I would accompany them to church when they visited, either with me here in Charlotte or with them up in Wisconsin. Early in my church-free life, the reason we remained unaffiliated was that I could not envision raising children and taking them to a place that things that I did not believe in were being preached. So living an ethical life, observing the golden rule, respecting nature, these were my values, and that's what I believed I was passing on to my children. Beyond any real reason to stay away, though, I just didn't feel like my life was missing anything that joining a church could supply. More importantly, I was not willing to lie about my true beliefs or lack thereof to be accepted into a church. And life stayed busy. In 1973, my husband was offered a promotional transfer to Charlotte. I had never heard of Charlotte. Sorry, Charlotte. I know that's crushing for the world-class city, which it was not in 1973. But 2 years in Germany had demonstrated the joy of escaping Wisconsin winters, and with more money, we could afford to buy a starter house. So off we headed for a new chapter and a fresh start. During the next 10 years, I completed my college degree, started a business career, changed companies 3 times, and ended a 14-year marriage. Most significantly, I started a life partnership that has lasted over 40 years. Although unaffiliated, Steve and I were actually married in a church. Myers Park Baptist had the darling little chapel, and I had a friend who was close to one of the ministers. Our blended family started with my 2 sons, age 15 and 13, and Steve's 2 daughters, age 13 and 5. Eventually, we added 2 daughters-in-law, 1 son-in-law, and 8 grandchildren. More family than I could have imagined. At age 50, I resigned a corporate position to launch a consulting practice. Kaleidoscope Business Options helps small business owners improve operations and generate profits. It was another fresh start, fortunately one where being a woman was not a problem and gray hair was actually a plus. The plan had been to work full-time until age 70 and then phase into retirement. However, as I turned 69, a new opportunity became irresistible. One of my favorite clients asked me to come on board full-time and fix his manufacturing business. By the third or fourth time he asked, I was getting tired of seeing him not fix his problem. He believed I could fix it. I didn't think it would be that hard. And so I couldn't keep taking his money as a consultant if he didn't solve the problem. So I agreed to close my consulting practice and become an employee again as VP of Operations and CFO of Fab Force Inc. in Lancaster, South Carolina. What I thought would be a 3-year gig turned into a 6 years of daily commuting to Lancaster. It was a grand adventure. We tripled revenue, relocated to a larger manufacturing facility, upgraded production facility capacity, and improved profits. By the time COVID hit, I had evolved into a part-time advisory position and replaced myself with internally developed leadership. So, at 75, I finally retired in mid-2020. Inquiries still trickled in for project work or part-time advisory assistance, but being a business person just didn't appeal anymore. It was time for the next chapter with a different focus. One that included more emphasis on being than doing. My life had been full of both accomplishments and adventures. No bucket list. The next chapter was preparing for death. It was time for a more spiritual focus, and for that, I needed support and a safe place to process and reflect. Fortunately, I have wise and loving friends who provide sounding boards for my musings, and one with past UU experience recommended that I check out UUCC. COVID made it both easier and harder to pursue that since there was so much content online. And by the fall of 2021, both Steve and I were ready to commit to membership. There was a lot we didn't know about UU, and there still is, but the 7 principles reflected my value, and I was convinced that being a member of UUCC was not going to require me to profess anything I didn't believe. And principles 1, 4, and 7 particularly resonate with me. In retrospect, I guess it was a big deal to join the church after 53 years of spiritual freelancing, but it felt right in November 2021, and it still does. So what sustained me during this 53-year period? Well, pretty much the same things that sustain me today. First is my relationship with Mother Earth. Being out of doors has always been a restorative experience for me. If I have to be inside, I want to be able to see out. No closed curtains or windowless cubicles for me. The entire web of existence holds me close. Walking is my primary form of exercise, and I don't listen to music or books or anything like that. I listen to bird songs and the rustling of the wind. For years, I felt that Earth-centric Native American spirituality best reflected my own spiritual belief. The Fond du Lac, Wisconsin home that I grew up in was built on land the government acquired from the Winnebago Indian tribe. And during childhood, I routinely remember finding arrowheads while working in our garden. I assumed that Indians had hunted there, but never thought about how much they might have loved that land and how they have come to lose it. Second is my connection to my ancestors. The afterlife was a major focus in my exodus from Catholicism. The concept of hell, even as a destination for really bad actors, seemed totally irrational creation from an all-powerful God. And the idea that innocent people would go there just because they weren't baptized Catholic was completely over the top. I had too many Jewish and Protestant friends to buy that one. But it also seemed irrational that people came from nothing and returned to nothing. Specifically, I felt the presence of my grandparents still loving me back from beyond the grave. My high school senior project was a family tree. I got back to my great-great-grandparents, complete with photos and place of birth and death. That project gave me a sense that I owed my own privileged life to the courage of ancestors who left Europe to start a new life in rural Wisconsin, which without, when they did it, we are connected. I need to do them proud, and they need to help me out. To this day, when I need extra strength or some big challenge, I pray to my ancestors for strength and assistance. Most recently, my dad helped us find a new home for our beloved aging dogs when their care became too much for them. I don't know how it works or whether I will be around in some way after giving up this body, but I'm glad I have people on the other side who love me so much. Third is a lifelong love of literature in general and poetry in particular. We did not own many books, but we were regulars at the public library. So from childhood, I knew that the world was much bigger than Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and I believed I was meant to explore more of it. By the time I was completing my college degree in 1975, UNCC and Queens College were both hosting poetry readings on a regular basis. I attended as many as possible and found them spiritually nourishing. My favorite venue became Poplar Street Books in Fourth Ward, where Rosemary Latimer gathered local poets for Sunday afternoon readings, complete with wine and cheese. These were regularly standing room only, even during football season. Sunday afternoon, football season. Poets and, poets and poets. Okay. I guess that was the closest thing to attending church I experienced. So in closing, I would like to share a few things that particularly inspired me. In 1975, I discovered a book of essays on poets written by poets. The one by E.E. Cummings particularly inspired me to see life as a precious adventure. I have read this essay hundreds of times over the years, and today I'll share just two excerpts that touch me the most deeply. Miracles are to come. With you, I leave a remembrance of miracles. They are by somebody who can love and who shall be continually reborn, a human being, somebody who said to those near him when his fingers would not hold a brush, tie it to my hand. And the last line of this essay is, never to rest and never to have, only to grow. Always the beautiful answer who asks a more beautiful question. This poem is one of mine, inspired by an afternoon at the beach. Lying on a towel on the sand, baking in the sun, I had the feeling of becoming one with the earth. At 31 years of age, I was coming to grips with the reality that I too was going to die someday. A startling thought. But if dying means becoming one with the earth, warmed by the sun, maybe it won't be so bad after all. Driftwood. Sinking into sand, my stepchild-fashioned castle swept of bitter pills, the garden cleared of rotting pumpkins of disappointment. When hard crystals of me emerge from the ashes, which one will hold my child's smile, the smell of summer rain? Which one the water, wind, and sun, the touch of you, is dead? In the early 1980s, I discovered a young Native American poet named Joy Harjo. PBS was airing a program created at the Chautauqua Arts Festival, and Joy was one of many poets reading their work. I loved it all, but one poem cut through to my heart, and for the past 40 years has given me strength to face my deepest fears. I give you back, by Joy Harjo. I release you, my beautiful and terrible fear. I release you. You were my beloved and hated twin, But now I don't know you as myself. I release you with all the pain I would know at the death of my daughters. You are not my blood anymore. I give you back to the white soldiers who burned down my home, beheaded my children, raped and sodomized my brothers and sisters. I give you back to those who stole the food from our plates when we were starving. I release you, fear, because you hold these scenes in front of me, and I was born with eyes that can never close. I release you, fear, so you can no longer keep me naked and frozen in the winter or smothered under blankets in the summer. I release you, I release you, I release you, I release you. I am not afraid to be angry. I am not afraid to rejoice. I am not afraid to be black. I am not afraid to be white. I am not afraid to be hungry. I am not afraid to be full. I am not afraid to be hated. I am not afraid to be loved, be loved, be loved, fear. Oh, you have choked me, but I gave you the fish. You have gutted me, but I gave you the knife. You have devoured me, but I laid myself across the fire. You held down my mother and raped her, but I gave you the heated thing. I take myself back, fear. You are not my shadow any longer. I won't hold you in my hands. You can't live in my eyes, my ears, my voice, my belly, or in my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart. But come here, fear. I am alive, and you are so afraid of dying. By the way, Joy Harjo went on to become poet laureate for the U.S. and held that position for 3 consecutive years, 2019 to 2021. Life throws some challenges at us, and sometimes it feels overwhelming. I'm a great believer in self-care, and when I feel overwhelmed, I'm known to say, you can't take care of anyone else if you don't take care of yourself. Or, in the words of the flight attendant, be sure to secure your own oxygen before attempting to twist your stomach. This Mary Oliver poem captures that feeling. The Journey by Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do, and you began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug of your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind cried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of cloud, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. I'll close with a poem that I just wrote last month. Early in my adulthood, someone asked me what I wanted to accomplish in my life. And I remember responding that I don't know what I want to do, but I know the kind of person I want to be. I'm far from perfect, but I have mostly become the person I wanted to be. Now I just wish I could do more of the things I could do when I was younger. So just as I look to my ancestors, I look to my younger self, as expressed in this poem. Looking for strength. Well into my twilight years, I am amazed to remember a stronger, youthful version of myself, taking on life in huge gulps, moving to a foreign country, having babies, beating on the corporate glass ceiling, starting over after a failed marriage. How do I tap that resilient, optimistic self and pull her youthful confidence back into this frail body? If the promise of the woman I have become inspired her, somehow her fearless determination and lust for life and hold me up now. Thank you.
Don't go far. We're going to get the Q&A. Thank you. That was wonderful. I think this was the most spiritual presentation we've had, at least this year.
For the unaffiliated freelancer.
Paul is going to moderate questions from Zoom. Do we have any questions that way yet?
No.
Okay. Anybody in the room? Yeah.
Curious, when you moved down here in the early 70s, in the what they call the Belt Buffalo, the Bible Belt, you were in the unchurched phase. What was your experience with others? Were they trying to recruit you, if you will, or whatever term you want to use?
I'm very well aware that people, you were expected to go to church and people would try to recruit you, and I was just politely declined and was very kind of evasive. I didn't really answer a lot of questions. And it was interesting because, I didn't realize that people in Wisconsin are so reserved until I moved here. Because honestly, people don't ask you what church you go to. They're rude and invasive. And maybe it's just the timing it was settled and who settled it and why. But I definitely got some of that, but somehow I skirted it. It probably cost me some social life.
Anybody else have a question? Well, what do you spend your time doing these days besides writing poetry?
What do I spend my time? Taking care of my frail body. A lot of exercise, which is important to me now. There were some health conditions that I have. Spending time with my husband. Moving to a continuing care community, and there are a lot of activities, a lot of social activity. I enjoy making jigsaw puzzles, making new friends.
So a question I warned you that I was going to ask is, you're a fairly new member of the church and you are serving on the membership team. Tell us about how that came about and your participation in it.
Well, Kelly asked me to do it. Yeah, I don't have to say anything more. But truly, my first response was, I haven't been a member long enough. I'm not sure it's appropriate. But she said she wanted diversity on the team. And quite frankly, I felt I didn't have a good reason to say no. And there are a lot of things that I can't do. I can't march in parades. There are things that physically I can't do it. My husband and I both have Parkinson's, and so there's some limitations what I can do physically. So I felt this was something I could do, and I had no reason to say no, and I think it's important that we still do.
That's a wonderful reason.
Are you a member of other groups outside of UUCC that you share with us?
Yeah.
Are you a member in any other
Other
groups?
groups? I'm a long-term member of Women Executives of Charlotte, which was formed in 1978, and I've been a member since the beginning of that. And that was a business women's organization at a time that the only business women's organization for the Secretaries Association. So that's an important organization for Wilmington. And I'm part of a women's forum that's attached. It's a group of 6 of us who have a forum group, and just kind of like your personal board of directors. And we talk about and share everything. And that's one of those women is the one who sent me here.
Any other questions? Yeah, this is it.
Just an observation that I had in my head that you were a long time UU. So the few times that we chatted, I think what that means is your spirit fits really well here. Since I made that up in my head.
It feels good. I mean, I haven't felt any discomfort with being here. So.
Any other questions? I'm sure she'll be available to talk one-on-one if you want to stay. Thank you so much for coming. Next time we'll be hearing from Joe Spencer, who's been a member for over 40 years. Look forward to that.
Thank you.